So this has been my desk setup for the last couple of months, and on it here you can see we have a couple little bits and pieces. We got a shelf, got some plants. This has changed a couple of times, and I'm going to be changing this again, but that's for a future video perhaps. Today I want to focus on the Starludarium. This is the Star Wars themed Degobah swamp aquarium I set up a couple of months back, and it's evolved and changed over time. Unfortunately, this week we had a little bit of a subsidence. We had a bit of the clay that's up on top, which all of the plants grow in, made its way down. It subsided and it went into the aquarium, and it really mucked things up quite a bit. You can see here we've got branches on the back, we've got living ivy and stuff, and it's just grown crazy. It's actually quite difficult for me to maintain. So for now, I think it's time that we do a bit of an upgrade on this. You can see we've got loads of the silt and soil back here, and it's just really difficult to maintain because as I come up here you'll see there's branches and stuff in the way. We've got all of our roots from our pothos, and I want to actually do some maintenance on this as well and remove some of those vines. I don't want vines in the water, I only want them in the soil up top, and you can see they're grown super well, as are all the rest of the plants. But it is time to start making some changes. Now this is totally alive up top. There's loads of little creatures and worms and all sorts in it. And we do the mist here with my mister, not Mere Mister. This isn't the crossover with Shira, Princess of Power. This is just a mister that I use. It's cheap mister off Amazon. And you can see here it sprays water up, and as it's doing that it turns it into mist. Now you can see here actually if I move it, some of the soil was there and it's after subsiding down and just making its way in. Now the little fish in here seem to be actually really enjoying kind of picking through the soil. It's just an organic clay which was treated before it was used, so it's absolutely fine for the aquarium, but it's pretty unsightly. As you can see, it's not looking too good, and that's just not good enough. We need this to be nice and clean and clear, because if it's going to be a display tank, we need to make sure that we can look at it and enjoy it. And you can see here are some of the inhabitants. We have a couple of panda cories. They've been breeding and actually doing really well in there, and we have a couple of ember tetras as well. And we have a little heater here. It's only a little small one, little 25 watt heater, keeps things up nice and neat. And you can see here, of course, we can't forget about R2D2, and we also have a couple of snails in here, and they're going to need a little bit of extra calcium added in, so I'm going to add in some shells and get that taken care of. Now, what we're going to be using for this build is this. I had completely forgot about 6 or 7 years ago. I put these into storage and absolutely just forgot about them. I was using this for my bearded dragon. You can see we've got some sand inside. Now the bottom of this will actually hold as much, if not a bit more water than the original Starludarium setup. So we're going to have to do a bit of work on this, get this all cleared out. It was in storage, there was birds nesting overhead. They've really mucked up the whole thing and made it quite messy. So it's time to give this a really good clean. We need to get it all cleaned on top, and we're going to switch it out for the Starludarium. Now, go in, remove all of the waste stuff on it. There was it was sealed up because the last thing that was used in it actually was a snake, was what it enclosed last, and it's killing me to do this. But it's time to cut this branch with it, which I've had vines growing across the back of my computer screens on my office desk for the last couple of months. It's been doing so well, but unfortunately it won't fit, so we're going to cut through that. We'll remove the other section because we're going to save that. There's no reason why we can't use that later, and give it a bit of a clean up afterwards as well. Now, the Starludarium is on a foam base, which is really handy because it means it's actually quite easy to slide around on the desk. That was done because I have a bad back. I can't be moving big heavy aquariums around, and like that I needed it to be really easy to move, and it just protected it from the desk as well. If there was a little bit of sand or grit underneath, it can cause the base of your aquarium to snap or crack, and it's just a case then of giving everything a bit of a clean up and getting the new tank set up in place. Now this was given a good clean, a good scrub, because this was in a shed for literally like 6 or 7 years, with birds nesting overhead, droppings on it, and the last things that were in this were bearded dragons and a snake. Actually, a corn snake would have been the last thing in here. So I was given a good scrub, and then I got it right into the corner. I had sized this one up, and it is a perfect fit for where I wanted, which worked out really nicely. So I just took my time, made sure I was happy with where I got it, and then it's a case of getting everything else set up now. Okay, so I'd measured this up, but and I knew it was going to be a nice tight fit. That's perfect. I can get my lid on, and I have access above here if I want, in and out. This is actually movable because this is actually just on hooks, which is perfect. So I can actually move this back and forth and get access to it. And obviously I've got my front doors here where I'm going to be able to get some access to, which is going to be really, really nice. Now, I don't want to leave this here too long. I actually want to get most of this stuff in here and start moving that across kind of ASAP. But before I do put all this stuff in here, I'm going to put the backdrop in, because I do still have a foam backdrop from when I had like a bearded dragon in it. I'm actually going to utilize that setup in the back of this rather than leaving it bare. So I'm going to get that set up, and then we'll start transferring stuff across, which should be interesting. So I'm going to do that now. I think my best bet is actually just to try and take out this entire kind of floating area in one go and get that removed, and then I can worry about all of the rest of it, because there's quite a few kind of loose rocks and stuff like that that this was sitting on. But what I've done was I've raised up the water level enough so that this is now floating off it. So when I lift up all this, none of these rocks are going to subside or anything. But you can see here we've had a little bit of movement, and I just want to make sure that I'm not doing too much disturbing, because I know that there are little fish hiding inside the rocks, so I need to be super careful. And yeah, so I think I'm going to lift all this on the log out in one go and just move it straight in. So this is probably going to be a little bit messy. And I absolutely wasn't wrong. So I disconnected everything, put down some towels, and yeah, lifted the whole thing up in one go. Now, like I said earlier on, this was completely alive. This is full of worms, and there's isopods and grubs and all sorts of different critters in there. So I wanted to make sure I kept them all healthy and safe, and put it all in one go. Now I put in a small amount of water first, so if anything did drop into it, that they'd be okay. And this was the pump that I had been using. It was originally pumping water up into the top part, and it was trickling down, and the mister was up there. But I did make some changes because I found there was just a bit too much water in it, and it's getting a little bit too waterlogged, and I just changed that. It was a little bit awkward. What I'm doing now is I'm siphoning some of the water across from the old Starludarium in, so that when I transfer the fish across, there won't be too much of a shock. They'll be in pretty much the same water, same chemistry, and that it won't be a shock to their system. And it means then that I can transfer the fish straight across. Now, normally I'd prefer to do a build where I take my time with it, and I really just plan out every part of it, and I have the opportunity to do it before I put the fish in. But unfortunately, because this was a transfer as opposed to setting up an entirely new thing, and putting new inhabitants in, etc., because this was just changing their setting, it meant I had to do it really quickly. I have time once I get everything in, and as you can see here, I'm just popping in all of the fish. The panda cories, you have to be careful. They've got little barbs on their faces so they can get caught in nets. So you have to be really careful when you're transferring them across. And then I'm just topping up with some fresh water. Now, a lot of the sediment that had fallen down, a lot of that clay which was causing issues that had fallen in and subsided, that made its way in here as well this time. I'm not too worried about that for now. Again, that's part of the current water chemistry which the fish are used to. I'll get rid of that through water changes slowly but surely over the course of the next week. And now it's a case of just putting everything in place. I've put some rocks along the back, just on the bottom corner. And what I've done is I've taken handfuls of sand from the old setup, and I've put that over it, so it's actually kind of blocking up all of the holes, and it's filling them in so that waste and sediment can't get caught up between the rocks. And you can see here, just by filling in all those little gaps, it means that we're not going to create these horrible little areas where waste is building up and accumulating and getting trapped and making the water go nasty. So once we've got everything in, it's a case then of just clean everything off, give it a good wipe down. You can see this is a much messier build than if I was just doing this from scratch, and like I said, taking my time. I had to make sure that the water temperatures were kept the same, that the fish didn't get too much of a shock. And what you're seeing now at the moment isn't the way I want this to finish up. This is just a transfer of everything. But again, this is being a new Starludarium 2.0 in a completely new environment. We have the opportunity to do a lot with this that we didn't in the previous setup. The previous setup had completely overgrown. It was after outgrown the aquarium, the tank, whereas this enclosed, we can actually have quite a bit going on in it, and we can create a much better sealed environment where we've got an awful lot more mist. And now what I'm doing is I'm just testing everything out. and I'm hanging some of the plants from above down. But I'll be honest with you, I decided this wasn't what I wanted in the end, because there was a little bit of air blowing in and it was preventing the mist from rising up, which is what I really want. So I think it's time to put the lid back on this setup and start adding some new plants and start getting this lit and just the way that we want it, and start evolving it into Starludarium 2.0. Now, like I said, this is completely alive. As I was planting some new plants, I noticed some of the little grubs and guys that are living in here. Absolutely amazing. I seen a couple of the little woodlouse that live in around, some of the isopods. Absolutely fantastic to see them going around in here. And what I've done is I've added in some moss from, you had seen the shelf above, that had loads of moss on it. There was plants on it. I've decided to dismantle that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that moss into this system, because it's going to do much better in here than it did on that shelf where I was constantly having to mist it, and you could see it wasn't doing as well as I wanted. It wasn't that really vibrant green. What I've done today is, over the course of the day, I've been trimming some of the plants and I've been adding some plants in from around my back garden. You can see here things have really cleared up, a couple of water changes in. I've got a lot of the sediment out, and the fish are actually doing really well. They seem to be really enjoying all of this extra space they have along the front, and as panda cories love to do, swim along the glass, which is absolutely fantastic. It's such a pleasure to watch. And I think R2 is seeming to enjoy his new environment as well. Not that you can see him too much in here, but he's doing really well. And I think a lot of the plants which I've transferred in, including my air plants that I had on one of my other setups, are going to do fantastic in here. And one of my favorite parts about this system is, after it's been running for a while with the doors closed, opening them up and then all that mist flow out. And the best thing, one of the best things about this is the smell. It actually smells like a forest. It's amazing. It smells like a forest after the rain, which is just so nice when you're sitting at your office desk. And you can see here a lot of the plants that have gone in are absolutely loving it. So lots of these plants, they just came from other things that I had out the back garden. I propagated them. I didn't spend any money on, and that's one of the things that I love about this build, is I didn't spend any money on it. This didn't cost me any more than the original setup that was there. It was just a case of spending the day transferring things across, foraging for a bit of moss from some of the other systems that I had, and just moving everything and getting it in place. And the mist really does kind of finish this system for me. I absolutely love it. It gives it that really swampy feeling, and whereas that used to kind of spill out over onto the desk and didn't really accumulate the way I wanted in the old setup, it's really kind of building up in this system, circulating around. And you can see here, just for some kind of alien-like creatures, I've added in a couple of my avocado pits that I'm growing on. I think that they're going to do well in here. You can see this is one that split and broke. Should do fine. The roots are trailing in, and they give kind of a creepy alien feel, which I think is perfectly suitable for a swamp like this. I hope R2 doesn't mind. They definitely won't bother him too much at all. And a lot of these plants that I've put in, like I said, were propagated from plants that I had around. They'll do well in this kind of moist, kind of swampy rainforest environment. We've got our Christmas mosses, we've got our air plants, and we've got all of our pothos as well. Now they're actually trailing down into the water, and they're acting as part of the filtration system on this, because this doesn't actually technically have its own filter as such. There's no mechanical filtration going on in here. Essentially all of the filtration that's going on in the system is biological and chemical. I'm actually removing wastewater out and replacing them with fresh water slowly, but there's so many roots trailing into this. I'm utilizing them for absorbing nutrients which are being created as a result of the fish waste. That's it, guys. Starludarium 2.0 done and dusted for today. It will continue to evolve, but I just want to say thanks very much for watching this video. I really appreciate you checking out my channel. If you want, feel free to check out The Joy of Aquascaping on Instagram. That is where I would probably be most active. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.